Welcome to another episode of WJ Live, powered by The Western Journal. I'm George Upper, editor-in-chief of The Western Journal, reminding you, as always, to click on that subscribe button and on the bell next to it so you'll never miss an episode of WJ Live, where you will always get the truth about the news of the day from people you trust. People like today on the show, newly minted supervising reporter Michael Austin.
Hello. Is that's official now, I guess?
That's official.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, it's official. He's got the latest on revelations from yesterday's Arizona Senate election audit hearing, which, if you didn't watch, we carried that live here on WJ Live, had quite a bit of interesting information in it. We'll cover all of that for you. And Western Journal contributor Cameron Arcand brings us disturbing news from the Uyghur concentration camps in China. But first, according to a whistleblower who sent damning internal emails from an Air Force lieutenant colonel to Tucker Carlson, the U.S. military has been ordered to transport an unknown number of illegal aliens from Laughlin Air Force Base to locations around the country. I'll tell you right now, as a veteran, the rank-and-file soldiers involved in this operation do not like it. That's why we have a whistleblower leak in the first place. I pretty much promise you that this did not come from an officer. It came from one of the enlisted guys on the ground. Officers, especially senior officers, you know this if you've been in the military, they're career-minded. They're much more political than enlisted men are. They have to be by nature of their position. And high-ranking officers especially are card-carrying members of the establishment elite. In fact, General Michael Flynn, who I spoke with yesterday, likes to call the military-industrial security system that now controls most of the S a tool of the elite, and certainly high-ranking officials pretty much in any branch of government, including the military, are going to have to be a part of that. So I promise you, these are rank-and-file guys who are getting this information out. The email in this case that was leaked to Tucker Carlson, or series of emails, were to subordinates of a Lieutenant Colonel Matthew Burrows from the Lieutenant Colonel, ordering those subordinates not to take photographs of the, quote, undocumented non-citizens, which is, I believe, the first time I've ever heard that phrase, being transported, or to post anything about the program on social media. So in other words, Americans like you are not allowed to know what the American military is doing, at taxpayer expense, of course, because Joe Biden doesn't want you to know. We're supposed to accept the wisdom of the elites in the Biden administration because they just know better than us corn-fed heartland types. Look, how the Biden administration is using your money to fund your military to shuttle around illegal immigrants in your country. Well, that's just none of your business, according to the thinking of the establishment elites who run this country. This is obviously a national security threat, and because we don't know who these people are. I'm not saying they're dangerous. I'm just saying we don't know. For the same reason, it's a health threat. We don't know what health issues they may bring with them, whether that's COVID or something else. I'm not saying they're bringing anything with them. We just don't know. It's definitely an economic threat that we do know, because these folks receive government benefits that you pay for while they work, at least in some cases, for lower rates of pay than typical American workers, citizens would get. That depresses the wages of working Americans overall. That part is for sure. To quote Tucker Carlson, the current mass movement of foreign nationals into the United States was never approved by Congress. No one passed a law asking for it. The Biden administration just did it unilaterally without asking Americans what they thought of it. And then they tried to hide it from you. Why'd they do that? Because they knew what Americans thought of it. That's why they didn't ask. They might have gotten away they might have gotten away with it too, except for this whistleblower. So, Cameron and Michael, let's see if we can find a way to give the Biden administration the benefit of the doubt on this. What legitimate reason could the Biden administration have to keep this activity secret from the American people? What legitimate reason might exist for that? Cameron, can you think of one?
Public relations. And they have this entire time throughout the whole border crisis, they have prioritized public relations over the health and safety of not only the American people, but also the migrants there too. Remember when they were covering up everything with the facilities at the border?
Right.
They do not care about these people who are coming across the border, and they do not care about the Americans who are affected by the people coming across the border. It is all about protecting their, quote, transparent image that makes them seem like they are a more humane administration than the previous one. And that is not true. We know this for a fact. And another thing I'd like to mention here is the fact that if we think Americans are angry about this, talk to veterans in particular. I had one of my grandmother's friends actually called me up the other day. That never happens very often. And she was like, do you hear this whole thing on Tucker? He's talking about how they are how Air Force people are sending in illegal immigrants to different parts of the countries. And she was saying how when she was in the military, how, you take the oath to protect and serve the people of the United States, that if you don't know the people who are coming in, then are you really protecting and serving these people in the United States? And that's why, kind of going off your original point about the fact that the people in the military are going to be really upset about this. And I would really like to see the internal documents that shows how they're vetting these people and how the people in the military are feeling about this and who is commanding this in the first place.
Yeah, you're assuming they're vetting them at all with Cameron, which may be giving the Biden administration more benefit of the doubt than they deserve. Michael, what do you think? Is there a legitimate reason that the Biden administration might have to keep this activity?
I mean, I could sit here and use my imagination to try to make up a bunch of scenarios where this would be okay, but there is no legitimate reason for this to be happening. Now, in the eyes of Democrats, in the eyes of Biden, the legitimate reason would be that these people are refugees and that they need to get shipped out to various sanctuary cities across the U.S. where they're not going to face
sure, but why keep it secret? Why can't the American people know if it's such a good thing to do?
If I were Biden, if I were the Biden administration, the way I would spin it or the way I would see it, depending on, if they're stupid or if they're
dumb or dishonest.
If they're dishonest. I almost forgot the phrase there. But the way I think I would see it if I was a leftist would be that these people are in danger. If the media knows that they're going to these different places, ICE is going to be right on their tails. All these racists in America are going to be targeting them then. So
you think the Air Force so one branch of the government is helping hide these illegal immigrants from another branch of the government. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely think that's what this is.
I wouldn't, that's how dysfunctional the federal government is. I wouldn't be surprised.
ICE and a bunch of sheriff deputies and stuff, they issued a lawsuit recently against the Biden administration for unconstitutionally not allowing them to do their jobs.
Yeah.
So they are fighting each other.
How do you suppose the Biden administration is deciding where to send these folks? What's that calculus look like?
I would assume, and this is all speculation, but I would assume they're sending them to the sanctuary cities and to states where they have the best chance of going under the radar, not being apprehended. All of the above. So.
Cameron, would you agree with that? You're from a area of the country known for its sanctuary policies.
Yeah, I would say they're also probably looking at places that, unlike the more practical side, like big facilities. I remember San Diego, Santa Ana, they're basically looking a lot of times for convention centers. They're looking for a lot of places where they can put large amounts of people so they can either attempt to process or just essentially have a large space where they can put them. So I would imagine they're coordinating with a lot of the people who are leading these sanctuary cities because honestly, they're a lot of these people, they're ending up all different parts of the country. I bet if you looked up, if you're in a major city, you look up your local convention center, I'd say there's about a 50-50 chance that there are people staying in there right now.
Interesting idea. That's a very interesting idea.
And with the way that immigration facilities on the border have been overflowing and how that's created such a controversy for him, it's not a surprise that he would be doing something like that.
Yeah. No, you're right. Well, speaking of large open areas, we've been using one of those here in Phoenix for an activity other than
yes, the
high
Maricopa
supporting-
County audit, the audit
Yeah.
of the presidential election results from 2020. The whole country has been following Maricopa County's audit of the election results, and they just came out in a hearing yesterday and revealed some of the major findings that they came out with there. And the findings were shocking, to be frank. It looks like Maricopa County election officials are either completely inept, completely corrupt, a little bit of both. That's probably what my bet would be on. But
we're gonna be doing dumb and dishonest,
dumb and dishonest
throughout the whole show
that should be
today,
the new name of
apparently.
this show is dumb or dishonest. But some of the findings, and our site was blowing up when some of these stories started hitting.
Yeah.
People
Oh, yeah.
really are interested to hear about some of this. Among those findings were 74,000 ballots that were received and counted in the election results, mail-in ballots. There's no record of them ever being sent out in the first place. So that was probably the biggest of all the bombshells revealed. In addition to that,
That's a huge number when
yeah.
you consider that Arizona went for Biden by like less than 12,000
about
votes.
10,500, I think, something like that.
That sounds right.
In addition to that, the election security systems, they found those to be incredibly outdated. The last time they were updated was August of 2019.
Oh, that sounds safe.
And some of the cybersecurity experts that were hired by Arizona Republicans to conduct the audit, they found that it would take about 10 minutes to hack those systems if someone knew what they were doing. In addition to that, remember Sharpiegate?
Oh, yeah.
Remember those times?
Yep.
Those were fun times with Sharpiegate.
It was brief. There we go.
There we
We
go.
have a visual aid, ladies and gentlemen.
So Sharpiegate, the whole controversy was that election officials at different voting sites, they were giving certain people Sharpies to fill out their ballots and certain people, other utensils that you're actually supposed to use, because if you use Sharpies, they can bleed through the ballot paper and basically invalidate that entire ballot. And so, election officials told us there's no way this happened. There was no bleed through. All ballots in the Maricopa County election used vote secure paper, which is this really thick paper that's supposed to prevent bleed through from any sort of, from Sharpies to pens to anything. But what the audit found, and we have a picture we're going to pull up for you right there, is that there were plenty of ballots that suffered bleed through, and as many as I think roughly, let me make sure I get this right, 36,000 ballots did not use the vote secure paper.
Wow.
So they were vulnerable to bleed through.
Right. Now, that doesn't mean we had 36,000
No.
invalid ballots. It doesn't mean we had 3 invalid ballots. It just means that what Maricopa County told us, that this was not a problem, could not possibly be a problem, was either ignorant or a lie to the tune of 36,000
Sorry.
times,
So so I double checked that number. That was 168,000 ballots.
Okay.
That
a little,
could have
a
been
little more than
compromised.
36,000 ballots.
I was a few off
168,000.
there.
Yeah.
It's a
Do you
little bit-
work for the Maricopa County Election Board? Because
No, but I might as
sounds like
well.
they're kind of counting. Yeah.
And as this entire audit's going on, Maricopa County, their election officials, they have refused to cooperate with the audit despite what they're saying. They've refused to hand over really important records.
Right. Ignoring
records,
subpoenas.
all of those things, records about the router data that would have showed just kind of if the election systems had been compromised or not.
Yeah.
Information regarding the transfer of ballots, the different hands that they came into. None of that information has been given to auditors. And so
And they've just apparently been rude about it. Like,
Yeah.
the some of the testimony yesterday in the hearing was,
Yes.
we asked for these envelope addresses, and they told us you already have them, and they're in this like several terabyte dump of information. And
Yeah.
so the auditors are like, okay, well, where? And they go, and the answer is like, you already have them. Okay, but where do we have them? We already sent them to you. It's like, that is not helpful, Maricopa County.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
And one of those officials had the audaciousness to come out, I believe, late yesterday and say, we've given those auditors everything they need to conduct an audit.
You're right.
And this is all a farce and all that. But, they haven't been. These people, if nothing else, these people are inept and they don't know how to protect our election security. So I wanted to toss this to you guys for just a second here. What do you guys think about some of these results? You know, the ballots that have no records of being sent out, the, you know, systems open to being compromised. What do you guys think about all these findings?
Cameron, you want to jump in on that? Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say this. I've been extremely skeptical of the audit, and I still am pretty skeptical of it. But regardless of whether or not I'm skeptical of it, I think there is still a big point here about all of kind of the findings and all of the politics surrounding this, because the audit has been insanely polarizing just in general. Our elections need to be simple and secure.
Yeah.
And they are not that right now. And the fact that there is a door for this to even be questioning any of this, and we're looking at things like discrepancies and other things, there clearly is a need for election reform somewhere. And the fact that, and I think the pandemic opened the door for a lot of issues to occur where we were changing the way we vote rather suddenly and very quickly. And I definitely think that I don't really know a whole lot. I'm not going to go too much into the audit process in general, but I will say that the fact that there is so much doubt and so much anger about either thinking the audit is a complete sham or people thinking that somehow this is going to, all those ballots were for Joe Biden, that conspiracy theory that it has turned over the election in several states. There is clearly a disconnect here, and that disconnect can only be solved with common sense election reform that is not hyper-partisan. And we're seeing that right now in places like Texas, where you have the Democrats walking out when they're trying to create election reforms. And that is just going to make people more skeptical of the process when we need to have trust in our voting process again.
And I will say, you know, the election official that I was talking about earlier that came out and denounced the results of the audit, he said that these were the types of things you'd find in any audit of, you know, elections conducted across the United States, and that there was no evidence shown of that voter fraud overturned the election results. I think both of those things are true, but that's a shocking thing.
Right.
That I think elections across the country are not organized well. They're organized by these county officials that just, you know, they don't have much accountability, and they're just super open to fraud. And I think if we conducted more of these investigations, I don't think 2020 would get overturned, but I think we'd find that our system is really open to being compromised.
Yeah, I mean, if what his point is, yeah, I think election machines, ballot machines, election software across the country has not been updated for security for 2 years. Is that really what he's saying? If so, that's horrific. It's probably not true.
Yeah.
But either it's either horrific on a national scale or it's horrific incompetence in Maricopa County, which is why he wants to stand there and say, you know, this is typical. You'd see this anywhere. Really, we'd see the possibility of of 168,000 incorrect ballots. We'd see that possibility in any county in the country. And again, I'm not saying there are 168,000 incorrect or fraudulent ballots.
Right.
I'm just saying there's 168,000 that are called into question because of the way they were filled out, which was improper. That's fine. Mistakes happen, whatever. But now let's get to the bottom of that and make sure it doesn't happen again. What is the problem with that?
And that speaks to both kind of what Cameron was talking about, that, you know, this doesn't necessarily show this audit. You know, there's a lot of questionable things going on in this audit. I think there's no doubt about that. But I'm guessing that he's right in that if you held this sort of audit anywhere in the country, you could, if you went looking, you could find discrepancies everywhere, and that shouldn't be a thing.
Right.
So
now, transparency is the way to go here, and one thing I will say about this audit, and Cameron, I'm with you. I've had some skepticism about the whole process from the beginning, but the people conducting the audit, which is largely Republican-led, have done a pretty good job, I think, in being transparent about what they're doing and how they're doing it and explaining that as they go. Karen Fann, who's running it for the Senate, not a hyper-partisan, crazy conspiracy theorist person. She's pretty, moderate, middle-of-the-road Republican. Good person to be kind of on point for this. And it's done well. And what the Democrats seem to be doing is hiding. And even if it's not hiding because they have bad motives, it appears that what they're often essentially arguing is, we don't want to go into this in detail because if we do, people won't understand it, which is such an elitist, undemocratic attitude to have. They don't understand it. Well, explain it better. That's your job. And if it's that complex that it needs to be explained that much, then maybe the system's too complicated to begin with. So, which is the argument that everyone on the right is basically making, from day one. So, regardless, there are lots of potential problems here. But at this point, we're really not down. I think we're really not asking, is there a problem with the election security, election reliability, election trust? The question is, which problem do we have?
Yeah.
And also, I'll go ahead.
No, you're good.
Okay. I'll say this too, is the focus of this process right now needs to be the mindset of not only the people watching, but of these officials too, is making things better going forward.
Right. Yeah. Right.
And I think that's the part of the disconnect between why Democrats are so hostile to this and why people are skeptical is, I think a big chunk of it has to do with people maybe wanting this to lead to something in the past, when we're really, I think you can make the point that this is looking at the past, looking at what went wrong. How do we make those changes in the future? If that was the mindset with this, where we're looking at it forward thinking, I think these kind of audits would maybe get more support if we're looking at it in that sense, not kind of going for maybe somehow, some way, the election would be overturned, because that's not realistic. And I think that that is part of the mindset issue right now.
Well, and you're right, Cameron. That is the mindset of the people doing the audit in Arizona, as far as I can tell.
Exactly.
I mean, even in the hearing yesterday, there were a number of interruptions to take notes about. Okay, well, let's look at this process for next time. Let's see if we need to revise the guidelines for the next election. Nobody realistically is talking about somehow overturning the 2020 election. Look, if you're watching this and hoping that's going to happen, it's not going to happen. The election results have all been certified at the end. I mean, that's just how it is. And I know that can be disappointing for people, but that is just how it is. Donald Trump is not going to be the president again unless he runs and wins in 2024. We have Joe Biden, assuming he survives through 4 years. We have Joe Biden for the next 4 years. That's how it's going to be. But that doesn't mean we can't make a lot of changes to improve the process for 2022 and 2024.
And Democrats, this is just one of many issues that Americans are super concerned about, that Democrats refuse to address, or at least they take the opposite position.
Right.
Another one of those issues is China and the whole situation going on with Uyghurs in the Xinjiang region.
Yes. So the other day there was a speech to the International Religious Freedom Summit, and it did feature one of the Uyghur Muslim woman who survived one of the very controversial, kind of becoming increasingly well-known labor concentration camps. We don't know the exact details. However, we are using the term concentration camp now because of the amount of abuse. It has been considered a genocide. We do have a tweet from the speech of that woman giving her testimony about this. And one quote from it kind of goes into how horrific that these camps were. And she says, "I was locked up in camps 2 different times. The second time was more inhumane than the first. And my experiences in these Chinese camps have left indelible scars on my heart." And I know this kind of seems like a jarring topic change from what we were just discussing, but I think this is kind of going on that note of government accountability and what happens when you don't hold government accountable. And just kind of going on that note, another part of her speech was saying how they would basically feed them Chinese propaganda, teach them basically like Chinese like red songs, and make them even swear oaths to the Chinese Communist Party. And that's not even the tip of the iceberg. She describes moments of serious sexual violence and other forms of violence that is going on in these camps. And the reason why I'm bringing this up and what I'm going to ask you guys right now is we talk a lot about domestic issues, but every day the threat from China to the United States and really to their own people becomes worse. And the question is here, we are not actively in any sort of war with China, but we have a lot of tension with them right now. How does the rest of the world and how does the United States hold them accountable?
Well, there's not, there's a lot that we can't do. But one thing we can do is just rhetorically admit, tell everyone what's happening, admit that there are horrific crimes happening in China. And, Biden has, Biden has from time to time condemned the genocide going on in China, but not very forcefully. And, he comes out with statements also saying, oh, we need to accept different cultures, have different moral standards and all that. We can't have a president whiff-waffing on this stuff. We can't have people it needs to be constantly called out, constantly pointed out. And everyone needs to know that this is an issue. You have the NBA players that are like, oh, no, it's not bad that we work with China. Chinese people are good people. It's like, no, well, the Chinese government is not a good government.
Right.
And we all need to be very aware of that. And unfortunately, people aren't. So I think governments, people, institutions, everyone needs to speak out and call this for what it is. And that will take us a lot farther than you may think it would. So.
Yeah, for all of the boycott effort, for instance, against Israel from the left, you would think that we could get just one occasional call for boycott against people who are actively murdering as many of the Uyghurs as they possibly can. The treatment this woman described as horrific. She talked about repeated rape. She talked about women being taken out, sexually abused, brought back into the general population on the verge of death. She talked about some women who were taken out and never heard from again. So who knows what happened to them? It's a humanitarian crisis, a tragedy, and you would think that Joe Biden might come out and say, "Hey, Coca-Cola, how about you stop selling stuff to China for a while?" And I don't mean to pick on Coca-Cola. I honestly have no idea how much business they do in China, but there are plenty of U.S. businesses that work with China. I've worked for many years with a company that did a lot of sourcing out of China. China would be hurt if those manufacturing companies stopped manufacturing in China and moved their operations. There are other low-cost options, Vietnam, Malaysia. There are lots of other low-cost options in Asia that don't support genocide, and it wouldn't take a lot of effort from the federal government or even from non-governmental organizations on the left to organize against China the way that they organize against Israel or against companies, even domestic companies that they see as somehow being not woke enough. The left have proven time and time again that they can be very organized when they want to be. Why they don't want to be in this case is a mystery.
And that silence, that comparison, that dichotomy you made between China and Israel, that's so perfect because, in Israel and Palestine, we have actual terrorists launching missiles at Israel. The left apologized for them. In China, we have Uyghur people who have done nothing, who are not attacking anyone.
Right.
The Chinese government calls them terrorists and then locks them all up in concentration camps, and the left doesn't do anything.
Right.
So that's a perfect comparison.
And kind of on that note, too, is when the Holocaust was going on, very few Americans and very few people across the world actually believed it was happening because the flow of information at that time was very restricted with the media in that period of time. And the reason why I kind of bring awareness to this is all my mother's side is Jewish. And whenever I kind of see something like this happening, where I see kind of this slow buildup, I always kind of wonder, I'm like, what happens if this just keeps going? And at what point, whether it's 10 or 20 years down the line, are we going to actually find out the full consequences of what is going on there right now? And I think that is an incredibly important thing to note right now, because the rest of the world, I think, is a lot of countries are aware of this. And I'll bring up an example in a minute here, but they are absolutely terrified of the economic and military power that China has.
Sure.
And the United States could be, honestly, could be doing so much more right now to hold China accountable. The UN could be doing more to hold China accountable, but we all know the UN is a complete disaster, and they are a complete joke when it comes to human rights. And so an example of this right now is the United Kingdom is voted to have a diplomatic boycott of the Beijing 2022 Olympics. Now, everyone loves to think that the Olympics are a time to come together, sing Kumbaya, and probably a country that is doing a lot of awful things. So that is exactly what's happening with Beijing in 2022. And what I want to ask you guys is, should the United States do a diplomatic boycott of these Olympics coming up? Because that is where a lot of times these diplomatic talks occur, because these countries are gathering. Or should we do a total boycott or no boycott at all?
I think a boycott would work. I think that would be helpful. That would help further the cause. We don't need to do that, but if in absence of doing that, we need to be speaking out about it in some way. So in general, yeah, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, it might be that it wouldn't even come to that, Cameron, if we would just threaten to do it. If we would do anything, if Joe Biden just got on the phone, or probably not Biden himself, but State Department folks, diplomatic people, get on the phone with their counterparts in China and say, look, I don't know how long you think you can do this without us taking action, but it's not eternal. You don't get a free pass on this forever. So you tell us what you're going to do to bring this to a halt, or we're going to start taking action. One of the things we are, that's on the table is a boycott, a partial or complete boycott of the 2022 Olympics in Beijing. I'm old enough to remember when Jimmy Carter called for a boycott of the Moscow Olympics in 1980. It was met with mixed reactions in the U.S. There were some folks who just said, hey, this is supposed to be a worldwide get-together, kumbaya, as you said, Cameron, and keep the politics out of it, kind of a thing. I don't think that would be the case today, but sports have become so politicized anyway that I don't think that. I mean, we run a story about that in the Western Journal, every day, pretty much, about some politicization.
That sounds right.
Yeah, sure. Of the Olympics or the NBA or Major League Baseball or whatever. So I just don't think that would be. I could see people looking back, like a Joe Biden or people his age, my age. I'm not quite Joe Biden's age, but looking back in 1980, going, I don't know if I want to do that. I just don't think it's the same scenario. So they may be a little hesitant because of that past history, and I would counsel them that's probably not that they're listening to me, but that's probably not an issue that they need to be worried about too much. Listen, folks, the establishment elites who run this country, the U.S., do not care if it turns into China. As long as they get they literally don't. They'll do whatever it takes to hold on to their power and their position. That's their goal, and that includes waging an information war against you, the American people, through Hollywood, establishment outlets like CNN, and the New York Times, social media sites like Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. You know that. This is not news to you. If you're a regular viewer of WJ Live or a reader of Western Journal, this is not news to you. You may also probably do know, the Western Journal is on the front lines of that war for American hearts and minds. And you can support us directly, and I mean directly. Like every penny you send will go to supporting our efforts in this war. If you go to westernjournal.com/join and become a member of the Western Journal today, for a limited time, and I keep saying that because nobody will tell me what the limited time is. I know it's limited. I don't know if it's limited to like 6 o'clock today or like Christmas. I truly don't know. Yeah. But for some sort of limited time, we're going to give you 2 months free on an annual membership. You pay for 10 months. We give you 12 months. That's not going to last forever, hence the limited time phrase used earlier. But you're going to get exclusive content there, not available anywhere else. And we just published a piece last week that Michael himself wrote. That is only available to members. We don't do a lot of that. What we write, we like to share with everybody as much as we can. But this is important stuff, and we need your help to fight this battle. So, and more importantly than that exclusive content, though, is you'll know that you're making a difference on the very front lines of this war against fake news and establishment media bias. We need your help in this. One last programming note. I'm having trouble with the multisyllabic words today. Yeah. Except for multisyllabic. I seem to be okay with that one.
Yeah.
Last programming note. Yesterday, I sat down with General Michael Flynn for a wide-ranging discussion of the situation America now faces and what everyday heartland Americans like you and me can do about it. The interview will be available soon on and only on The Upper Cut, a brand new podcast coming to you from the Western Journal and hosted by, well, modesty forbids. Yeah, my last name's Upper. You can probably do the math. Is that math?
Georgia. Yeah, it's your podcast. Okay.
Yeah.
I got it.
That's why we promoted you. Because you're a bright young man.
I know how to
Michael.
put things together.
You see patterns.
Yeah.
So keep an eye out for more information about the Uppercut podcast coming very soon. And our first few episodes will be featuring Michael Flynn. It was a great interview. You don't want to miss that. And with that, we will bid you farewell until our next episode. We're here to bring you the truth every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. We'll see you again next time on WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal. Thank you, Cameron, for joining us. Thanks, Michael. Thank you all for being here. We'll see you next time. Stay safe. Welcome back to WJ Live. I'm George Upper, editor-in-chief of the Western Journal, and I'm joined today by two very special guests. We have...
you think I'm special? Thank you.
I think you're very special.
I appreciate that.
And from my friend, Andrew J. Shasha, reporter for the Western Journal, who has graced us many times in the past. Welcome back, Andrew. We've already done 50 episodes, 2 more, and we'll be equal to my age. I am flanked by two of our, that's a word I don't get to use very often.
It's true.
Flanked. And I'm joined today by assignment editor Joey Chester, as well as crack reporter Michael Austin.
Yes.
Yes. Not joining us today, my white polo, because apparently that memo doesn't go to everybody. I'm George Upper, editor-in-chief of the Western Journal, and this is Not Smoldering. I'm joined today by, what are you, distribution manager, Brian Chai, right? Manager of distribution operations.
The distributor of things.
Distributor, right. And with that, we must say sayonara. We said adieu on Friday. We said farewell on Monday. And today we're saying sayonara.
Oh, Frank.
There's no particular reason why I picked that one, Brian. It's just coincidence. We'll be here to bring you the truth every Monday, Wednesday, Friday.